Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Should you drink the goo? Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we are here to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Y'all asked for the spoiler-filled review. So that's what we're gonna do. This review is gonna be filled with spoilers. Spoilers everywhere, all over the place. So just make sure that if you don't want spoilers, you don't watch this. Because we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about all of it. We're gonna talk about the end of the movie. We're talking about characters in the movie and how they were depicted. It's gonna be wild. All right, let's jump into it, shall we? So, first things first, this is all out of order. I mean, it's not that there is an order. I'm just gonna be talking about I've made some notes, so we're gonna go in the order of my notes. I hope that's cool with you. So I wanna talk about Kang first, because I think Kang is the only person that we all agree is great, right? I think Kang is the only person that we all agree is awesome, and we love Kang, which is weird because going into Kang being announced in the MCU as our villain, not someone I would have thought as the person that I would have been like, yeah, I'm so excited for Kang. But considering where we are now, I am excited for Kang, actually. I am hype about it. Because you know what happened? They said, hey, we're going to have Kang. And I said, that's kind of random. And then they said, oh, it's going to be Jonathan Majors. And I said, never mind. Give me more Kang, please. And yes, I was not disappointed in this film. I was also not disappointed in season 1 of Loki, which if you haven't seen season 1 of Loki, I would definitely recommend watching it, whether or not you liked Quantumania. It is just really, really good. I think you'll like it. And it is good for understanding sort of a little bit more what's going on in this film. That being said, I don't think it is required to understand what's going on in this film. However, I've seen some reviewers disagree with that opinion. And I will say it is hard for me to examine whether or not that's fully true because obviously I've seen Loki season 1. So yeah, it's a good time. So I think the thing that we all agree on for this film is when it comes to Kang, when it comes to Jonathan Majors, thumbs up. Most people's reviews that I've seen have said, this movie, but Kang, though. As though Kang is the only thing in this movie that's good. Which, I mean, Jonathan Majors is amazing. I'm not trying to take that away because I 100% agree with all those people that are saying he's amazing. Yeah, true. Facts. Also, if you haven't watched Lovecraft Country, you should watch that. Because it's amazing, and Jonathan Majors is in it, and that is, I think that's where I first fell in love with him in terms of his amazing acting ability. And honestly, that whole cast, though, is fantastic. But yes, you should watch Lovecraft Country. It's fantastic. You will not regret it. You will be sad that that's all we get of it. Like I was probably. But other than that, I mean, it's amazing. And we all love Jonathan Majors. I get it. However, to say that he's the only good thing in this film, I think is a little insulting to everyone and everything else in this film, which I think also did a great job. And yeah, they're not Jonathan Majors, they're not Kang, but there's some really great stuff in here. And so I think to say that this is the only thing, that's where we start to maybe disagree. So, and if that's what you think, I mean, that's totally fine. I'm not here to tell people what to think. I'm just here because, I don't know, there's people on the internet that want to know what I think. So, here we go, I guess. So, I did love his portrayal of Kang. I thought it was very awesome, very intimidating. Although I did miss the one scene between him and Ant-Man, so I need to go back and see the movie again because that's when I had to go to the bathroom. And I went to the bathroom before the movie, but I really had to go. And as soon as I came back, I was like, I missed that scene, didn't I? And yeah, Uptown Duck looked over at me and said, yeah, you missed that scene. I was like, no. But I've heard it's amazing, so I will go back and watch it. No worries. I did notice that there were a lot of people talking about Kang that seemed to think that Kang is the best and he's so serious and he's so, like, a serious evil guy, and so why is he in such a weird movie? Because it's weird and it's sci-fi and it's quirky and it's silly. I don't think these people know about Kang and his invisible chair. Jen, can we get a picture of Kang sitting in his invisible beanbag chair, please, with his little dagger? Kang is kind of a weirdo, friends, and so if you are are watching the film and you think, yeah, Kang does seem really serious. I'm here to tell you, if you feel like he doesn't fit here, based on the source material, he does kind of fit in with silly stuff, because he's kind of silly, to be fair to Kang. It's not a bad thing. In fact, I love that about him. I hope we get the invisible beanbag chair at some point. I was hoping we were going to get it in this movie, but they didn't do it. And maybe if they had done it, people wouldn't be saying it's weird that Kang is in this movie and this is where we meet him. I think it makes sense to me, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense to some people. Some people have been talking about how Kang is now going to be the antagonist, the only antagonist basically throughout this next phase, which I also think is a little weird. I've seen, like, obviously the Kang Dynasty film we're going to get, he's going to be in that. He's probably going to pop up all over the place, to be fair. I do agree with that. But I read a review from AV Club where they were talking about how, like, he'll probably be, like, the main antagonist of Secret Wars. And I'm like, he might be involved a little bit in Secret Wars, but the wheels for that have been in motion since before. Like, since Multiverse of Madness, we have heard the word incursions, and those of us that know of Secret Wars from the comics and Doctor Doom and Battle World and everything that happened with that version of Secret Wars anyways, which it seems to be what they're alluding to in the MCU with everything that's been talked about it, seems like it's not going to necessarily be Kang. Now, Kang might still be somehow part of it, but I don't think he's going to be the main person behind it, because I think the main thing is just going to be worlds colliding. But I could be wrong about that. However, I don't know. This kind of gets on to the point that I've been touching on a little bit, which is that, one, I just feel like there are so many people that are reviewing this film that are over the MCU. And I understand that as a reviewer, it's your job to review stuff. So sometimes you gotta review things you don't want to review, that you're over. But it feels unfortunate because it feels like it's a disservice somewhat to the movie to not have people that are super hyped reviewing it, and for some reason that seems to be most people. And a lot of these people also talk about characters and what's going on that I'm not even sure have fully like consumed all the content in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Never mind if they've, looked at all into anything that it's inspired by from the comics. And I'm not saying that everybody that loves the MCU needs to read all the comics or every comic. I haven't even read every comic. That's ridiculous. I'm just saying that I would take with a grain of salt everything you're seeing in terms of reviews, because I think a lot of people are tired that are reviewing this film. So they just don't have the energy to be excited for it because they're over it, which is also fine. I just wish that they weren't the people that were prominently reviewing the movie. Yeah. Something else about Kang is that in the microverse, in the quantum realm, I should say, as it is in the MCU, the town, he built sort of like a city. And I will say I loved the look of this city because it reminded me of Chronopolis, which I don't know if we're going to get Chronopolis later because of the final scene, the post-credit scene with Victor Timely, and I believe Victor Timely is like the creator of Chronopolis, the Chronopolis that existed like outside of time. So that might be a thing. So I don't know if this is actually Chronopolis. It just had a kind of Chronopolis look to it, and I really dug it. So I just wanted to say the design for the city is super cool, and I liked it. And I wish we got to see a little bit more of actually Kang's like armaments and everything. It just, yeah, it looked neat. And I wish we got to spend a little bit more time there. Another villain is in this film, though. It's not just about Kang, okay? It's not just the Kang show. There's also Modoc, which many people on the internet seem to be struggling to spell somewhat. So I'm going to help you spell it. Modoc actually stands for mental organism designed only for killing. But Modoc actually used to be Modoc, which is spelt a different way. So the way that we would actually spell it now with the killing is M-O-D-O-K, right? 5 letters. Yeah. I don't know why it counted like this. That was weird. And formerly, Modoc was M-O-D-O-C, which is a mental organism designed only for computation or computing. But of course, Modoc was designed to be this, mental organism, this person sort of turned into a computer that then became evil and so became just about killing. Because technology is evil, as we know from many sci-fi films. We've already learned that one. So that's how you spell Modoc. It's M-O-D-O-K or M-O-D-O-C if you're talking about, the original intention for George Tarleton, who is Modoc in the comics. in the film, we got Darren coming back as Modoc, who you may remember from the first Ant-Man film. And I personally loved this depiction of him. The CGI was so dumb, and I loved that it was dumb, because to me, Modoc is kind of a ridiculous villain. Even in the comics, he's ridiculous. I mean, just look at a picture of him from the comics. Just look at, like, Modoc. He's a big head with little arms. Like, literally, there was also a stop-motion series about this where Modoc is actually played by Patton Oswalt that's super fun, and if you haven't watched that, you should go watch that. It's a very good sort of real, like, everyday slice of life version of Modoc's story, and it's so ridiculous and it's so fun, but there's also lots of heart in it. It's way better than it is any reason to be. But yeah, Modoc's always kind of been like that to me. He's always kind of been ridiculous, the butt of people's jokes. So it made sense to me that this was his depiction, and I feel like they did do him justice. I thought he was still somewhat terrifying at moments, and I also felt he was pretty ridiculous at other moments, and to me, that pretty much sums up Modoc, so yeah. People also seem to be a little bit upset in this movie about Janet not talking about her time in the quantum realm, and I personally thought that was really well done in this movie. Well, not completely well done. I would say it was mostly well done. I think it makes sense that Janet wouldn't be talking about it before they went into the quantum realm, and every time someone's brought it up, she's just kind of shelved it and said, you know, like, nah, nothing really happened. I don't really want to talk about that, because she has trauma related to it. So to me, that made a lot of sense. People that have trauma don't usually like to just, let me tell you about all this trauma. And especially when you feel like you failed maybe your family, in the sense that you had an opportunity to go home but you didn't do it, or even you failed in the sense that you stayed in the realm and you tried to fight this person, and although you got out, you actually never were able to defeat them. There's a lot of shame, I feel like, that Janet probably has surrounding her time in the quantum realm, that to me it would make sense as someone who has experienced trauma in my life that she wouldn't want to talk about it, and she wouldn't feel comfortable, maybe yet, even though she's been out for a while. I think that makes sense. When she was back in the realm, people say, oh, but once she was there, wouldn't you think she'd be like, oh, there's this guy Kang, and like he's gonna come, and like all of these things about when she was there. But even then, I think it still kind of makes sense, because to me, she didn't talk about it then because she was kind of hoping that she'd be able to get to Krylar, and that Krylar would be able to get her and her family out before she would have to tell them about Kang. That was my theory for that, as to how it can make sense. Now, granted, I understand when people are like, once you're in the quantum realm though, it might be time to talk about what happened, because it's pretty relevant to what's about to happen to you. And yeah, I mean, fair enough on that one. I can totally see the other side of that as well. But just trying to find a narrative reason to make that make sense, and why I think it could make sense just actually is, you know, she was kind of hoping they'd be able to duck out of there before she'd have to explain any of it at that time. So let's talk about Krylar. So Krylar is played by Bill Murray. And Krylar is basically someone who was fighting alongside Janet when she was last in the quantum realm. Obviously, it's been a while, and time moves differently, I think, while you're in the quantum realm, obviously. So he's changed, and now he's kind of skeevy, and he's this big lord who's basically working with Kang. And I will say, I kind of thought Krylar was pretty fun in this film. I thought Bill Murray did a good job portraying Krylar. I know a lot of people were nervous about that, I think because of everything else that's going on with Bill Murray right now. But that, like, just aside, not aside in the sense that, like, we shouldn't talk about that, just in the sense of I'm just talking about the performance here is all I'm talking about. I thought that the performance was good, and it was, it was a cool time. And Krylar being a jerk, I felt pretty good about what he got coming his way in the end. I liked the little guys that he was like, yeah, you gotta eat these guys, they're great. And then Hank just made them giant, and then they were like, now we're gonna eat you. I was like, yeah, justice. Justice for those little guys in the cup, those poor little guys. I loved that. I loved Hank just using his Pym particles in this entire movie. Like, even in the beginning, one of my favorite scenes in this film is when they're sitting down and they're gonna eat pizza together, and Hank's just like, I'm just gonna sprinkle some Pym particles on this, and we're gonna make it giant. And Janet's like, oh, like, you know, your Nobel Prize is in the mail, dear. And I was just like, this moment where they're all together, it was just so, I don't know, it's just such a good ensemble piece to me. Like, everyone just wants to talk about Jonathan Majors, which, like I said, I understand because he's amazing, but I actually think the whole cast did a really good job in this movie. Jonathan Majors is still a standout, but I really loved the family together, and I liked their dynamic a lot. And so, having moments where they were all together and interacting, it just felt really good to me. I don't know. Speaking of sweet moments between family, there's also another one that I really loved where it's basically revealed that when Janet was in the quantum realm, it's alluded to that her and Krylar were a bit of an item, and Hank finds out about this, and rather than being judgmental at all, I just loved both Hank and Hope's reaction to this fact that, like, Janet hadn't told them any of these things, but they weren't judging Janet for not telling them. They were more just saying, like, you can tell us things and, like, you don't have to be afraid that we're gonna judge you. And I was like, it's, like, making me emotional just thinking about it. I was like, that's so sweet, because that's what Janet probably needed, because she was probably judging herself so much for everything that happened in the quantum realm, and even the fact that she wasn't saying anything to her family probably didn't feel good to her. So yeah, there's a moment where they just kind of, after they escape Krylar and they're on the ship, and Hank's doing this weird thing with the ship controls where he has to, like, put his arms in these, it's like an organic ship, so it's like alive. I loved that. I thought that was super funny. But they have this really sweet time where they just kind of reconfirm that they have absolute faith in each other, and it's super sweet. Also, Hank basically confides to Janet that he was also seeing someone, which Hope is kind of like, you stop talking about this. But Janet asks, you know, what happened? Like, it didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? And Hank's like, well, she wasn't you, baby. And I was like, aw, Hank and Janet together, though, in the MCU. So sweet. So sweet. I love their dynamic in the MCU. It's so good. All right, friends, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk about the mid-credits and the post-credits. So let's jump into that. So the mid-credits is basically all of the Kangs, the Council of Kangs, if you will. We see Rama-tut. I saw a more classic version of Kang the Conqueror with, like, a more comic, very comic inspired outfit that looked pretty silly and great. Immortus is there. It's kind of Rama-tut, Immortus, and then I think it's supposed to be Scarlet Centurion, but I didn't actually see Scarlet Centurion. I only know this from doing research into making my notes for this video, because I specifically was sitting there and was like, I don't see Scarlet Centurion, where is he? But I must be blind, because Peyton Reed said that in an interview he did mention a Centurion Kang. Now he didn't say he was there. He was just like, you know, there's Rama-tut, and like, oh, is that Immortus? And like, oh, is that a Centurion? So I think he was there. I don't know if he was part of that triumvirate, but if he was, I missed it. And I feel bad because Scarlet Centurion is one of my favorites. So, a bit of a bummer. But also the house lights went up as soon as the movie ended in our theater, and they stayed up the entire time. So it was really hard for me to even see the credits, so that might be why I missed it. I was like, Cineplex, why? What, the house lights, please, please. But no, they didn't hear my pleas, and they left them on. So, and of course, let's talk about the post-credits scene. So that is Victor Timely showing up, and Victor Timely is basically seen by Loki and, of course, Agent Mobius, and they are looking at him and they're like, okay. And basically Loki's like, oh my, like recognizes him as He Who Remains, which we know from Loki season 1 is the version of Nathaniel Richards or Kang, or I don't know if Kang's actual name is Nathaniel Richards, but I feel weird calling him Kang because Kang is now like a different variant. And when you hear Jonathan Majors talk about this, Jonathan Majors is like, they're all separate characters. So I'm trying to respect that work he's putting in by saying, you know, this isn't really Kang, it's He Who Remains. So maybe another version of Nathaniel Richards, if that's what Kang's name is originally. So Victor Timely is there. Loki obviously recognizes him because he knows He Who Remains, has met that version. And obviously because everything was kind of reset, at this point Mobius probably does not know who the heck that is supposed to be. So that whole part was really, really fun. Very rewarding for us Loki fans. Maybe less rewarding for non-Loki fans, but you would be able to recognize at least, I think, that it's Kang. So you might be like, oh, that's Loki, and there's a Kang, and who's that other guy? And might get you hyped about Loki Season 2 or get you interested in watching Loki if you missed it. So I don't think it's bad that they have that, but there's some people that apparently were super confused by it. So yeah, let me know if you watched that, if you watched Loki Season 1, if you were confused or not. Let me know what you thought of the mid and post credits. I personally like both of them. I thought they both set up some really cool stuff, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Also, Victor Timely, who I ended my explaining Kang the Conqueror video on Top 10 Nerd. I ended it right before we were about to get into Victor Timely. So if you do want that Victor Timely content, please go over to that channel, go to that video that I did, and make sure you comment that you want Victor Timely and share it with all your friends so we can get enough views that I can talk to you about Victor Timely, because I would love to talk to you about him. He's cool. He's another version of Nathaniel Richards who basically becomes divergent and creates a whole town called Timely, and it's super fun. So I'm very excited to see more of Victor Timely and see what they do with him in the MCU. And that's pretty much it. I have some theories about this movie, and I have read some reviews, and I would love to do a review of the reviews for Quantumania, because there are some things that people are saying that like just need a response. Someone said that Quantumania is the first film since Endgame that's had real stakes. And I was like, well, I don't know if I agree with that one. I feel like we've had a lot of movies and shows that have had real stakes. But like I said, I'm not sure if everyone that's reviewing this, I don't know what they've watched, or if they've watched all of it, or what they've watched. So maybe this is the first one they've seen since Endgame with real stakes for them, which, hey, live your truth. And for theories, I have some pretty cool ones about like how this can connect back to Fantastic Four and some cool stuff. So if you want a theories video, let me know. And if you want to hear me talk about reviews and maybe roast them a little bit, but not too much. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching. Stay nerdy, Fang Gang. I'll see you in the next one. And yeah, if you haven't seen Ant-Man yet and the Wasp, Ant-Man and the Wasp 2 or Ant-Man 3 or however we want to number this one, go watch it. It's a good time. That's my final say.